was a psychologist who worked in the Harvard psychology department doing research. His research was backed by the United States government, and what he was researching was LSD, lysergic diethylamide acid. He was researching it in the context of understanding the human mind, behavior modification, etc. What he discovered was groundbreaking, and the knowledge that he gained became quickly suppressed. Thereafter, the knowledge that he had of how the mind programs itself and how we have the ability to reprogram our minds or other minds through techniques which we could maybe just call brainwashing or conditioning techniques. He was defamed and the information was suppressed because it was so phenomenal to understand the mind in the way that Tim Leary had broken it down. He broke down the mind and the development of the mind and brain and consciousness into 8 separate circuits. He called them circuits of the brain that got turned on at certain times in a human's life. When a human was born, they turned on their first amphibian or reptilian brain, and that first circuit of the brain called the biosurvival circuit. When a person is born, they come into this world and they are either nurtured and loved and their instincts are met, where they are suckling and life is imprinted as a safe place. So in your first circuit, you have biosurvival security or biosurvival anxiety. If you are born and you are, in the worst circumstances, right? In a garbage bin and thrown in the garbage, and somebody comes and finds you and you've been crying and you did not get any biosurvival needs met, you have imprint. It's like an engraving on a piece of metal. The imprint is very, very difficult to change later in life. So some humans imprint biosurvival security when they're first born and in their first short days, weeks of life, and some biosurvival anxiety. If you're born and there's yelling and screaming and hitting and no love, no touching, no breast, you will not be feeling as though life is a safe, secure place for the rest of your life unless you reprogram your mind. The second circuit turns on approximately the age 1.5 to 2. When the toddler starts walking around, the second circuit is called the mammalian territorial circuit. This is when the human brain starts to find its place in the pack hierarchy. It either becomes the alpha male, oh, Johnny's such a big boy, oh, look at him jump. Or it becomes an omega male, or the last in the pack. You stay down, no, you can't have no food, no bad boy, or whatever. So certain types of behavior then will imprint, and you'll either imprint, this is a place where I'm in charge, I'm the big man, I'm in charge, or you're going to imprint, wow, I better do what I'm told, everybody else is bigger than me, and they're yelling at me. That has to do with the mammalian brain. The neocortex and the third circuit turn on between the age of 2 and 3. This is called the laryngeal-manual circuit. This is where our manual dexterity and the way to manipulate the world, as well as communicate. Hi. Okay. As well as learning to verbalize. This is where, for instance, if you're reading to your child all the time, he will imprint these symbol sets and this language and phonetics, and looking at those letters, and each of those letters has a certain sound, becomes easy to them. If they're not read to, and if they're not taught the correct symbol sets and sounds when they are young, or if they learn a lot of slang, what happens when they go into the first grade, right, or kindergarten when they're 5 and 6, if they haven't already learned to read at that crucial stage of 2 and 3, you'll find it very difficult to learn the phonetics, especially if the phonetics don't go with the words they learned earlier. The fourth, so you're going to either imprint that this is an easy place to learn, and you're going to adapt learning as an easy thing, Or you're going to say, man, it's really hard to learn, and learning is going to be a difficult thing. You can reprogram these circuits. So remember that as we go along. The fourth circuit is called the social sexual circuit. It turns on anywhere between the ages of 5 and 12. The main aspect of this circuit is turned on and initiates itself upon the child's first sexual experience. The child imprints the babysitter with black hair and a thin body, and that's what they're attracted to for the rest of their life. Or a person likes a bigger person with a bigger body, or a shorter person or taller, and they like a blonde hair and they like a brunette hair. And that's why you see different people who are very, very attracted to different types of people, while other people are being like, oh, I don't see what's so attractive about that person. Although, of course, as we all know, everybody has the potential to be very attractive inside, depending on how they treat others. These are called the four terrestrial circuits. All human beings turn these on to some degree or another, and these are their imprinted reality. This is their belief system. They believe life is very safe, or life is a very scary place. They believe, you know, kind of, I'm in charge here, I'm the top of the pack. Or they believe, oh no, I'm just following around, it's okay. I know, don't yell at me, it's okay. That they're not the top of the pack. These people believe that learning is easy and I'm real smart. And the other people believe learning is difficult and I'm not very smart. These people are going to be attracted to certain things for their mating purposes, but this is also where the whole, remember, this is all just one mind, one developing brain. This is where all the social context comes in too. All your morals, all your religions. Remember when we first start learning the words, we learn them in the context of what we are being taught. Whether it's you're being brought up in this religion, and you're being brought up in that one, which of course satisfies the understanding for why there are different religions. People are brought up in different areas, and they are programmed and conditioned to believe different things, regardless of how true or false those things might be, because they provide a social security to us. The social rituals we have start when we're very young. We're told things that we find later are not true. We're told, for instance, oh, Santa Claus brings the presents. He comes down the chimney and he leaves presents for you. And then when we get older, we realize that there is no Santa Claus. We saw the presents in the closet. We saw the parents putting the presents out. We stayed up all night to watch. There was no Santa Claus. We found the same thing out about the Easter Bunny, who came and bring us goodies to celebrate the resurrection of Christ. And we celebrate the Tooth Fairy. Oh, look, when you lose a tooth, the Tooth Fairy comes and leaves money under your bed and takes the tooth, or under your pillow. Now what this does is it creates a break from reality, and it creates a strange concept that becomes imprinted in the human mind, and that is that as a little kid, we don't care once we find out. We might be disappointed that there's no Santa Claus, but what do we really care about? As long as I get my presents, as long as I get my presents, I don't care, let's celebrate, let's celebrate. So the citizen grows up into a society where he does not mind if he is lied to, as long as he is rewarded for it. And so we do not mind that we are lied to by our government, or the banking institution, or our advertisers, as long as we can go out into the world and do our job and get our money and buy our food and have our place to live and reward ourselves. As long as we are allowed to reward ourselves and live at a modicum level of happiness, we don't all dissent and go out in the streets and riot, like you see in Venezuela, in Hong Kong, where these people are saying, hey, wait, that's enough. My biosurvival is being threatened. These different realities, or tunnel realities, or mindsets, which follow all the way up into the different beliefs that we have about the different gods and the different religions, and then of course the fighting between the different religions, is all because we only have limited information. The next four circuits that very rarely open up amongst humans except in certain conditions such as yogic training and certain drug use. Unfortunately, that is a fact. So what Tim understood when he was doing LSD research was that he could take subjects and he could reprogram them in such a way that, for instance, this is what got him in trouble. He was able to work with prisoners, and he was able to reduce the recidivism rate in the prisoners by giving them acid and leading them through psychological therapy, where they would imprint the new reality that they wanted to imprint. They would say, yes, I don't want to be on drugs anymore, and I don't want to be an angry person anymore. And Tim would talk to them, and he would talk them through therapy sessions, and soon he would do an LSD therapy session. And he would imprint the different circuits the way that the person wanted them imprinted. So they were no longer afraid of being alive, and they felt that they were the top dog, and they learned how to manipulate the symbol sets properly, and they were able to fall in love and have normal social relationships, thereby providing happiness and not getting into trouble and coming back to prison. So when the authorities saw that he could reduce the recidivism rate by 80%, and how he could learn how, along with other pioneers at the time, such as John Leary, who wrote a book called Programming and Metaprogramming in the Human Biocomputer, who also did LSD research and research with isolation tanks, sensory deprivation, and other means of understanding how and why these different circuits can become what's called imprint vulnerability and then re-imprinted. The CIA then takes over research, and they start clandestinely using it for nefarious purposes. I don't want to get off track, so I apologize. So let us briefly go over the circuits that turn on, which are called the extraterrestrial circuits. He hypothesizes these may be what our mind is going to open up to, or the ways that our mind will open up to as we progress along this developmental stage humanity is developing on. So, if the fifth circuit turns on, and it's been turning on in humans for about 20,000 years, ever since we discovered marijuana, the person, and it was turned on in astronauts who would come back from their zero gravity, whoa, floating, free-falling, floating in space feeling, and this turned on a circuit wherein they, when they looked down on the earth, saw that all was one. The earth and all its people and all its different religions and belief systems, they're all one. So they had a mystical experience, kind of like the old yogis or some of our religious leaders who say we're all one, love one another, love your neighbor. This represents a hedonism, and outside of the normal domesticated primate hive hierarchy and belief structure, so that these people look at the whole world and say, man, can't we all just get along? And this was when the hippie movement started, when people were turning on to marijuana and acid opened up these other circuits. The fifth circuit of the brain dealt with body feeling and free floating, and that's why when people smoke weed they say things like, oh, I feel high. When the sixth circuit turns on, and the sixth, seventh, and eighth circuit can be turned on by LSD or by yogic practices of meditation, as well as all of these circuits can be turned on and reprogrammed through things like near-death experiences, brings the body's imprints to imprint vulnerability so they can be re-imprinted. Terror, fear, extreme sensory deprivation, light deprivation, or sensory overload, lights in the eyes all the time, sound deprivation or sound overload. In the opening of the sixth circuit, people begin to experience telepathy, a communication outside of the manual and verbal communication that we currently use. Tim created this model of the brain so that we could understand how and why we have the consciousness experiences we have, and how to relate these once again to a model. When the seventh circuit turns on, we have access to genetic script. And this is where past life experiences start to come in, where we start to remember things. Or some of us do, of a past life nature. I do not necessarily have any thoughts like that. Here, we turn on what we call the last circuit, which is the neuroatomic circuit, and that is where, for instance, one gains out-of-body experiences and experiences of the white light, which occur to people who have had near-death experiences, and they say, well, I was going into a tunnel and it was white light. That white light opens up in meditation. If you learn how to, or I should say in samyama, which is dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, the higher limbs of yoga, which I explained in my other video, and that white light opens up and the sound starts, deafening sound, and that is why they probably thought that God was the light, and also that there were trumpets blaring in heaven, when you have some of these old religious experiences being put down on paper. So that's the basic 8 circuits of the brain. These are supposedly going to turn on fully when we live in outer space. We can turn them on now with drugs. This gives us an idea of why the information was suppressed. Instead of using pharmacology and pharmaceutical drugs to alleviate our mental problems, we find out what the cause of the problem is. I was traumatized as a child. I was always beat down as a child. I never learned to read or write as a child. Everybody was mean to me, and the girls didn't like me, and I didn't have any social context as a child. And then the therapist can work through, and they don't have to give you LSD, because once again, we just learned, right, that sensory deprivation, isolation, and other techniques like fear will enable a person to create imprint vulnerability. This explains why when that huge trauma, for instance, for those poor folks in war, all people who are in these shootings in these schools these days, they go to imprint vulnerability. They might have used to think that life was a very safe place. Once this circuit gets scrambled and re-imprints with the new imprint, then, oh my God, things are blowing up around me. That's hard for them to ever get over the rest of their lives, unless the proper reprogramming techniques are used. One will think about now how the best technique of turning a prisoner and getting information from them has been well known. You bring the person to imprint vulnerability, right? They've already been captured, right? A prisoner of war, let's say. They've been taken into a cage. They might have been deprived of food, certainly the food they're used to eating. Within a day of this staying in a cage, or 2 days, or 3 days, finally somebody's going to come and talk to you. Now they can come out and start beating you and torturing you, but that doesn't work, and we've always known it doesn't work. What works is getting inside their head, after they've been afraid, and they're at imprint vulnerability, and then using logic. That's how they turned some of our American servicemen in the Korean War, the North Koreans. They know of these techniques. So they'll beat you and whatever, and they'll say, hey, look, if you want to live, you need to learn. And then they start re-educating you. And they start teaching you how, well, you know, for instance, oh, this society went over, and you guys were imperialistic, and you started the war, and all we're doing is trying to feed our families, and look, we're just poor rice farmers, and whatever the information is, there's always some truth to it, and that's how they can slowly change these other people's minds. When the Symbionese Liberation Army kidnapped Patty Hearst, whose father was I don't remember, was the owner or the president of a bank, but took rich Patty Hearst, right, she was really rich, and they reprogrammed her. And they reprogrammed her in such a way that she came back with these Symbionese Liberation Army, the SLA members, who had kidnapped her and reprogrammed her, and she came back, and she, with guns, robbed her own father's bank. So instead of us learning how to reprogram our own minds and being taught this in college and having our psychotherapists understand this. It's all about pushing a drug on you. You've got manic depressive disorder. Here, take this drug. You're depressed. Here, take this drug. And then when you take these drugs, they say, oh, this drug could cause this effect, this side effect, and that side effect. Take an antidepressant, and one of the side effects is suicidal thoughts and tendencies. If you guys can't see past that lie, I don't know what to do. So, if we know how to reprogram people to get information from them, and we know how to interrogate people, why did that whole Guantanamo Bay thing happen? And all those secret prisons where we tortured these people instead of interrogating them properly so that we could get information from them, instead of reprogramming their minds the way that we know how to, so that they become one of our tribe and then they want to work with us. It's because I believe that these high government agencies were intentionally trying to re-imprint their human nervous system. Remember, the government knows about all this. To re-imprint the human nervous systems of these people, to be afraid, to be pissed off, to have then a mindset of belief that America's terrible, and that we need to create jihad on these people, because they believe America cannot be allowed to just do this, just take innocent people and torture them. And so the American high-up CIA government officials, they know this kind of thing. They're creating this whole imbalance on our planet. I'll be doing another lecture soon. I hope this interests you. If I was not clear about some of it, well, leave me a comment and I'll do my best to answer. Thank you.